It's Deprogram, the podcast where we try to get you into a band. That's right, we've done all the work for you. All you have to do is press play and listen. My name is Justin, and you can call me Band Curious because I am indeed curious about bands. And it's Friday, which means it is a Q&A episode, so we are going to answer some Qs. We are going to A some Qs. And, if this is something that you'd like to get in on, then jump in on the Discord is honestly the absolute best way. Legion of Stupid Discord. I can give you a link if that's something that you'd like to do. But we can get in on it, and you can ask questions. I mean, you can ask questions anywhere. It's greatly appreciated having it all in one space. So, yeah, you can also pledge $1. I feel like I should do this. You can pledge $1 to the Patreon, and it'll get you an automatic invite to the Discord. So any way you want to come aboard, I said this on an after the fact. Deprogrammed is kind of like Project Mayhem from Fight Club, where you decide your own level of involvement. If you don't feel like being a part of the show, like being on the program, asking questions is super helpful. If it is something that you'd like to do, you can jump in the Discord, and there's a whole channel for finding panelists, and you can come talk about a band that you'd like to talk about. So we're going to, I think I already did this one. Yes, I did this one last week. So I'm going to remove that one and this one, because we answered that one last week as well. I'll talk more about this next week. But Gavin specifically asked, he'd like to hear a mini episode on championship editions. So look forward to that probably next Tuesday. Since I don't think I already have something carved out for next Tuesday. So next Tuesday, we'll talk about championship editions, which we haven't done that many, but we'll talk about that. All right. Joe asks, Justin, which lists do you think warrant a contested ep? To me, the one that jumps out every time is one we've already done, Jimmy Eat World. And it was just bonkers that we had to pull out of the trash. And it is one of the 20s that I'm the most proud of. Like, I feel like I nailed the band, and I feel like I went in the bin so often, or there was like a bunch of twos. There wasn't even a bunch of twos because we had to pull out of the trash. So we didn't even have 10 songs between the three of us. I mean, again, the show is kind of refined and changed since then to kind of avoid that. And like my approach would be different, but my list would be exactly the same because I think I nailed Jimmy Eat World. So much so that they've become a favorite. Like, I don't know how long it would take me to get to them, but my guess would be somewhere in the top 10. So Jimmy Eat World for sure. Most of the other ones would be like that first year stuff. Like the Smashing Pumpkins, I feel like would be slightly different. Like a lot of those were kind of based on, favorites as opposed to what would get somebody into the band. Local H might be different. I'd have to actually look what our actually 10 for Local H was, but my guess would be that would be different. Weezer might be, I don't know. I honestly, but I feel like the answer is going to be in that first year. A lot of that first year stuff. Other than Devo, because I feel like once we hit Devo, which is like April or I think May actually, because April is like Radiohead, Weird Al. But once we hit Devo and once we started hitting bands that I was unfamiliar with, like the show had to shift. So anything in that first year, except except the bands that I wasn't familiar with. So like your Steely Dan's, your Devo, like I feel like we probably hit those lists right. Elvis Costello Part 1. I feel like we probably did correctly. Whereas Deftones, maybe I might approach differently. Again, Pumpkins, Local Age, perhaps Radiohead. I feel like my approach to Radiohead would be the same, which is why we ended up doing a championship edition. Is I feel like the other panelists probably would have approached it differently. But it's a great question. It's just hard for me to say anything past the second year because most of the stuff I'm unfamiliar with. So I feel like most of the time we got it right, but that's also because most of the time I'm discovering the band. Most of the time, starting in year 2, I'm discovering a lot of the discography. So, you know what? The Frogs, for sure. That list for sure needs to be contested. But that's a year 1. Yeah, that's a year 1 thing. At best, it's a year 1. I think November of that year. Joe also asks, what would be your top 3 picks of band artists to talk about the playlist with? Pumpkins are not an option here. So, we've done a couple of these on dailies where it's, we did Super Drag, we did Discount, Mega Ran, we did the High Strung, which I haven't dug out yet. I need to figure out where in the After the Facts that is. So, I frame them as about that pod, and then I bounce the list off of the artist, and we talk about each of those songs, and if they've got stories about them, then they go in deep on it, which is really cool. I think for starters, Local H. I mean, if you're taking Pumpkins off the table, Local H, I think firstly Scott would just be a fun interview and a great conversation, but bouncing our list off him would be just cool. Like I would love to hear stories about some of the songs that we picked. I think Local H would probably be my first answer, and I don't know if that's a cop out because they're a top band in my life, but yeah, I think that's where I would start. Local H. All right, and then my inclination is. I'd love to bounce our Lizzo list off of Lizzo. I'd love to bounce our Janelle Monáe list off Janelle Monáe. One of those two would for sure make my top 3. I'm gonna go all over the board. I'm definitely staying away from your restriction of top 3. Violent Soho would be cool. The Beths would be cool. I think Tired Lion would rule. I think Violent Soho is going to be my final answer here. Is bouncing the Violent Soho list off of Violent Soho as they're about to come back. They're touring Australia. I don't know if they're going to come to the States, but they're touring Australia as of this recording later this year. So, Violent Soho would be cool. Local H. And then, like I said, I think either Janelle Monáe or Lizzo. Pressed, I think I would go with Janelle Monáe. I think Lizzo's list would be more on brand of what the show is. Because Janelle Monáe was, I think, 2018. And the show hadn't refined to what it is now. So, I guess if I'm pressed, bouncing Lizzo's list off of Lizzo, I think. Man, I don't know. Taylor Swift, bouncing our Taylor Swift list. There's just a lot of great artists. All right. Being pressed, final answer. We're going to go Lizzo, Local H, Violent Soho. There's so many that I would love to do, but if I'm being pressed to just answer 3, it's those 3. How about that? Well, let me turn that to you, the audience. I think I've semi-asked this before. What artists would you like to hear me try to find to bounce our list off of? Whose response to our list would you like to hear the most? And I will try my best to get them on the show to talk about it, presuming that I can. So there we go. It's Friday. That does it. We will talk to you all on Monday. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.